The heavy oak door slammed behind Natalia Reed as she stumbled into the marble foyer, her wedding dress trailing mud and rainwater across the pristine white tiles. Thunder crashed overhead while lightning illuminated her tear-streaked face through the towering windows. She had run for miles in her satin heels, her veil torn and hanging limp around her shoulders like broken dreams. "Please," she whispered to the empty mansion, pressing her back against the door. "Just give me a moment to think." Her phone buzzed incessantly in her clutch, probably Brandon calling again with another pathetic excuse for abandoning her at the altar 3 hours ago. The memory hit her like a physical blow. Standing there in St. Catherine's Cathedral, 200 guests watching as minutes ticked by, the priest clearing his throat awkwardly, her mother's mortified face in the front pew. But it wasn't just the humiliation that shattered her heart. It was the text message Brandon had sent right before the ceremony. "Can't do this. Found someone else. Sorry, Nat. The money's not worth pretending anymore." The money. Her family's textile fortune had always attracted the wrong kind of attention, but she believed Brandon was different. She'd been such a fool. A soft sound made her freeze. Tiny footsteps echoed down the grand staircase, followed by a small voice that seemed to float through the darkness. "Are you an angel?" Natalia looked up to see a little girl descending the stairs, maybe 4 years old, with wild dark curls and the biggest brown eyes she'd ever seen. The child wore purple pajamas decorated with unicorns and clutched a stuffed elephant against her chest. "Oh, sweetheart," Natalia breathed, quickly wiping her tears. "I'm so sorry. I think I came into the wrong house. The storm and all these mansions look the same and I just..." The little girl reached the bottom of the stairs and walked directly to Natalia, her small hand reaching out to touch the intricate beadwork on the wedding dress. "Pretty," the child whispered, then looked up with those enormous eyes. "Are you here to make Daddy stop being sad?" Natalia's heart clenched. She knelt down carefully, her dress pooling around her like a white sea. "What's your name, beautiful?" "Sophia." The little girl stepped closer, her tiny fingers now gripping the fabric of Natalia's dress. "Daddy says Mama went to heaven. But I asked God to send someone nice to help us not be lonely anymore." Before Natalia could respond, she heard heavy footsteps thundering down the hallway. A man's voice called out, urgent and worried. "Sophia, where are you, baby? I heard the door." He appeared in the foyer like a force of nature, tall and broad-shouldered, with jet black hair disheveled as if he'd been running his hands through it. His gray eyes swept the room, taking in the scene. His daughter clinging to a muddy bride in a $1 million wedding dress, both of them looking like refugees from different storms. "Sir, I'm so sorry." Natalia started to stand, but Sophia's grip on her dress tightened. The door was open and the rain. But the man's attention had shifted to his daughter, and Natalia watched something extraordinary happen. Sophia, who had been speaking in whispers, suddenly threw her small arms around Natalia's waist and buried her face in the wedding dress. "Daddy, God sent her," Sophia announced with more confidence than any 4-year-old should possess. "She's here to make us a family again." The man's face went through a series of emotions, shock, confusion, something that might have been hope, and finally a kind of desperate tenderness as he looked at his daughter. "Sophia, honey, this lady probably has somewhere she needs to." "No," Sophia said firmly, her voice growing stronger. "She stays. She's pretty like Mama was and she smells like flowers and she's not scared of me." Natalia felt tears prick her eyes again, but these were different from the bitter tears she'd cried over Brandon's betrayal. This little girl, this complete stranger, was offering her something she hadn't realized she needed: purpose. "I'm Natalia Reed," she said softly, meeting the man's concerned gaze. "And your daughter is right. I don't really have anywhere else to go right now." The man studied her for a long moment, taking in her obvious distress, the expensive dress, the way his daughter clung to her like a lifeline. Whatever he saw in her face must have convinced him, because his rigid posture relaxed slightly. "Adrian Thompson," he said, extending his hand. "And apparently, according to my daughter, you're exactly what we've been waiting for." Thunder rolled overhead again, but inside the mansion something had shifted. Sophia looked up at both adults with a smile so bright it could have powered the entire house. "See," she said triumphantly. "I told you God would send someone special." Natalia looked from the little girl to her father, both of them watching her with expressions of cautious hope. Maybe she had walked through the wrong door tonight. But looking at this broken little family, feeling Sophia's small hand slip trustingly into hers, Natalia wondered if perhaps she'd stumbled into exactly the right place after all. Could it be that sometimes the worst day of your life is just the beginning of your greatest blessing? Have you ever wondered what would happen if you opened your heart when everything seemed hopeless? Please subscribe and share your thoughts in the comments below, because this story is just getting started. Adrian Thompson had seen many unexpected things in his 41 years on Earth, but a runaway bride in his foyer at midnight ranked somewhere near the top of the list. He watched his daughter Sophia cling to this stranger like she'd found her missing piece, and for the first time in 2 years, his little girl looked genuinely happy. "Sophia, sweetheart, why don't we let Miss Reed sit down?" Adrian suggested gently. "She's had a long night." Natalia looked around the enormous foyer with its crystal chandelier and marble columns, suddenly aware of how out of place she must seem. "Mr. Thompson, I really should explain. I was supposed to be getting married tonight, but—" Her voice broke slightly, and Sophia immediately pressed closer, patting Natalia's arm with one small hand. "Did someone hurt your feelings?" Sophia asked with the directness only children possess. Adrian watched Natalia's face crumble for a moment before she composed herself. "Yes, honey. Someone I trusted disappointed me very badly." "That's mean," Sophia declared, her dark eyes flashing with righteous anger. "Daddy says people who hurt other people on purpose are not nice." "Sophia's right," Adrian said, surprising himself with how much he wanted to comfort this woman he'd just met. "Can I offer you something dry to wear and maybe some tea?" Natalia looked down at her soaked wedding dress, then back at Sophia, who was still holding her hand possessively. "I don't want to impose. I should probably call a taxi and—" "No taxis," Sophia said firmly. "You stay here. Tell her, Daddy." Adrian found himself caught between his natural caution and the sight of his daughter more animated than she'd been since Rebecca died. Sophia had barely spoken above a whisper for months after her mother's accident. Yet here she was, not just talking but commanding the situation like a tiny general. "The storm's getting worse," Adrian said, making a decision that felt both reckless and completely right. "You're welcome to stay until morning at least. Sophia's right about one thing: no one should be out in weather like this." Natalia's shoulders sagged with relief. "Thank you. I just need somewhere to think, to figure out what comes next." Adrian called his housekeeper, Mrs. Chin, who appeared within minutes despite the late hour, taking charge of the situation with the efficiency that had made her invaluable to the Thompson household. Soon Natalia was wrapped in one of Rebecca's silk robes, her wedding dress hanging carefully in the guest room to dry. They settled in the kitchen, Adrian making hot chocolate while Sophia sat beside Natalia at the breakfast bar, chattering away like they'd known each other for years. "Daddy works with computers," Sophia explained, swinging her legs from the tall stool. "He makes them do magic things. But he sat a lot because Mama can't come back from heaven." "Sophia," Adrian started, but Natalia placed a gentle hand on his arm. "It's okay," she said softly. "Sometimes talking helps." She turned to Sophia. "I bet your mama was very special. She was beautiful and she sang songs and made the best pancakes in the whole world," Sophia said. "But then she got very sick and the doctors couldn't fix her." Adrian's throat tightened. Rebecca had been diagnosed with a rare heart condition when Sophia was 2. They'd had 6 months to prepare, but nothing could have made losing her easier. "I'm sure she loved you very much," Natalia said, and Adrian could hear the genuine warmth in her voice. "She did. And she told me before she went to heaven that God would send someone to take care of me and Daddy when we got too lonely." Sophia looked directly at Natalia. "I think that someone is you." Adrian nearly dropped the mug he was holding. "Sophia, honey, Miss Reed has her own life. She can't just—" "Actually," Natalia said quietly, "I'm not sure what kind of life I have right now." She looked at Adrian with eyes that held the same kind of pain he recognized in his own mirror. "My fiancé left me at the altar today. In front of 200 people. Including my entire family." "Why?" Sophia asked with typical childhood bluntness. Natalia was quiet for a moment, absently stroking Sophia's hair. "Because he decided he didn't love me enough to stay." "Then he's stupid," Sophia announced. "You're nice and pretty and you smell good. Daddy, don't you think she's nice?" Adrian found himself really looking at Natalia for the first time. Even exhausted and heartbroken, she was stunning. Her dark skin glowed with natural radiance, and her kind eyes suggested a strength that went far beyond physical beauty. But more than that, she had brought light back into his daughter's face. "I think," Adrian said carefully, "that Miss Reed is very nice indeed." Sophia beamed. "See, can she stay and be my nanny? Daddy, Mrs. Patterson quit last week, and I didn't like her anyway. She smelled like old flowers." Adrian nearly choked on his hot chocolate. "Sophia, you can't just ask people to." Why not? Sophia turned to Natalia. Do you know how to take care of little girls? Natalia smiled, the first genuine smile Adrian had seen from her. I used to take care of my little cousins all the time. I love children. And you need a job, right? Because the mean man was supposed to take care of you, but he was dumb and ran away. Out of the mouths of babes, Adrian thought. He watched Natalia consider his daughter's innocent but surprisingly practical observation. I do need to figure out what I'm going to do next, Natalia admitted. I gave up my job to plan the wedding. Most of my savings went to. She gestured vaguely at where her wedding dress hung drying. Then it's perfect, Sophia declared. You can live here and take care of me, and I can take care of you when you're sad about the stupid man. Adrian looked at his daughter, more talkative and engaged than she'd been in months, then at Natalia, who was looking at Sophia like she'd been offered a precious gift. Sophia makes a compelling argument, Adrian said slowly. I do need someone to help with childcare. Someone who understands that she's been through a lot and needs patience. I have plenty of patience, Natalia said. And honestly, helping someone else might be exactly what I need right now. Sophia clapped her hands together. Daddy, tell her yes. Please tell her she can stay forever and ever. Adrian met Natalia's eyes across the kitchen. He saw hope there, mixed with desperation and a strength that reminded him of Rebecca in some ways. His practical mind listed all the reasons this was a bad idea, but his heart, and more importantly, his daughter's obvious joy, told him something different. Miss Reed, he said formally, would you consider accepting a position as Sophia's nanny while you figure out your next steps? Natalia's eyes filled with tears, but these were different from the ones she'd cried in his foyer. These were tears of gratitude and relief. Mr. Thompson, I would be honored to accept your offer. Sophia let out a little squeal of delight and threw her arms around Natalia's waist. This is the best day ever. We're going to be so happy now, aren't we, Daddy? Looking at his daughter's face, radiant with joy for the first time in 2 years, Adrian thought that maybe, just maybe, they would be. The next morning brought brilliant sunlight streaming through the floor-to-ceiling windows of the Thompson mansion. Natalia woke in the most comfortable bed she'd ever slept in, momentarily confused by the unfamiliar surroundings before yesterday's events came flooding back. She was no longer engaged to be married. She was homeless, jobless, and completely at sea about her future. But she was also, somehow, exactly where she needed to be. A soft knock at the guest room door interrupted her thoughts. Come in, she called, expecting Mrs. Chen with breakfast or perhaps Adrian with second thoughts about his impulsive job offer. Instead, Sophia peeked around the door, still in her unicorn pajamas but with her dark curls somewhat tamed and her face bright with excitement. Good morning, Miss Natalia. Are you ready for our first day together? Natalia couldn't help but smile. Good morning, beautiful. What time is it? 8 o'clock. Daddy's making pancakes, but he's not very good at it. They always come out funny shapes. Sophia climbed onto the bed with the easy familiarity of a child who had decided Natalia belonged in her world. I told him you probably know how to make perfect ones. Well, I do make pretty good pancakes, Natalia admitted. Should we go help him? Sophia nodded eagerly and grabbed Natalia's hand, leading her toward the kitchen. Natalia had put on her own clothes from yesterday, thankfully dry now, though wrinkled from their ordeal in the storm. They found Adrian standing over the stove, his dark hair falling across his forehead as he concentrated on flipping what appeared to be a pancake shaped like a question mark. He wore jeans and a simple white button-down shirt with the sleeves rolled up, looking more approachable than he had in his formal clothes the night before. Daddy's pancakes are funny, Sophia announced. But we still eat them because it's not nice to waste food. Adrian looked up, his gray eyes crinkling with amusement. Good morning, Natalia. I hope you slept well. And yes, my pancakes are somewhat abstract. I'm much better with computer code than cooking. Maybe I can help, Natalia offered, moving to wash her hands at the sink. If you don't mind sharing your kitchen. Please, Adrian said with obvious relief. Sophia's been looking forward to real pancakes all morning. As Natalia took over at the stove, she felt some of the tension from yesterday begin to ease. There was something soothing about the familiar rhythm of cooking, especially with Sophia chattering beside her and Adrian setting the table with careful precision. Tell me about your company, Natalia said as she poured perfect golden circles of batter into the pan. Sophia mentioned computers and magic. Adrian chuckled. Thompson Tech Solutions. We develop software for hospitals and medical facilities. Nothing as exciting as magic, I'm afraid. Daddy helps doctors save people, Sophia corrected seriously. That's like magic. Natalia glanced at Adrian, who looked slightly embarrassed by his daughter's praise. That does sound pretty magical. How did you get started in that field? My younger brother needed multiple surgeries when we were kids, Adrian explained. I spent a lot of time in hospitals, watching how hard the staff worked but how much time they wasted on outdated systems. I wanted to fix that. The genuine compassion in his voice made Natalia's heart flutter unexpectedly. Brandon had never talked about helping people. His family's law firm was notorious for representing corporate clients against environmental claims. That's wonderful, she said, flipping the pancakes with practiced ease. You must be very proud of what you've built. Daddy works too much, Sophia interjected. He stays up very late on his computer and forgets to eat dinner sometimes. Adrian had the grace to look sheepish. Guilty as charged. It's been harder to maintain balance since. He trailed off, glancing at Sophia. Since Mama went to heaven, Sophia finished matter-of-factly. But now Miss Natalia is here, so she can remind you to eat dinner and come read me stories instead of just working all the time. Natalia felt a warm glow at being so readily accepted into this family's dynamics. I'd be happy to help with that. And please just call me Natalia. Over breakfast, Adrian outlined the practical details of the job. The salary he offered was more than generous, and he was willing to provide room and board while she got back on her feet. The arrangement would start as temporary, with both sides free to reassess after a trial period. I do travel occasionally for work, Adrian explained. Usually just overnight trips, but I'd need you to be comfortable staying here with Sophia during those times. I wouldn't want to leave anyway, Sophia declared, reaching for Natalia's hand. We're going to have so much fun together. Right, Natalia? Absolutely, Natalia agreed, squeezing the little girl's fingers. What kinds of things do you like to do? Sophia's face lit up. I like to draw and paint and make things. And I like stories about princesses and dragons. Oh, and I like to dance, but I haven't done it much since Mama got sick. Natalia's heart ached for this brave little girl who had lost so much. Well, I love all those things too. And I know some pretty good dance moves if you'd like me to teach you. Really? Sophia bounced in her chair. Can we start today? If your daddy doesn't mind, Natalia said, looking to Adrian for approval. Adrian was watching their interaction with an expression that mixed gratitude with something deeper, more complex. I think that sounds perfect. Just be patient with her, please. She's been through a lot, and sometimes she gets overwhelmed or goes quiet for long periods. I understand, Natalia said softly. We'll take everything at her pace. After breakfast, Adrian retreated to his home office while Natalia and Sophia explored the mansion together. The house was enormous but felt strangely empty, as if it were waiting for more life to fill its rooms. Sophia gave her a comprehensive tour, chattering about memories associated with different spaces. This is where Mama used to read to me, she said, pointing to a cozy window seat in the library. And this is where she taught me to paint. They stood in a bright sunroom filled with art supplies, many of them clearly untouched for months. Would you like to paint something today? Natalia asked gently. Sophia nodded eagerly, and they spent the next hour creating colorful masterpieces together. Natalia was amazed by the little girl's talent and imagination, but even more impressed by her resilience. Despite her losses, Sophia approached each moment with enthusiasm and hope. Around lunchtime, Adrian appeared in the sunroom doorway, looking pleasantly surprised to find them both covered in paint and giggling over Sophia's rainbow elephant. Having fun? He asked, his voice warm with amusement. Daddy, look what we made. Sophia held up her painting proudly. Natalia taught me how to make clouds that look real. It's beautiful, baby girl, Adrian said, ruffling her curls. You're quite the artist. Natalia says we can make a gallery wall in my room with all my pictures, Sophia continued excitedly. And maybe you can paint something too, Daddy. Remember how you used to draw those funny cartoons for me? Adrian's expression grew soft and slightly sad. I remember. Maybe I could try again sometime. Watching them together, Natalia felt something shift in her chest. This wasn't just a job anymore. These weren't just two people who needed her help. This was a family, broken but still full of love, and somehow she was being invited to be part of it. Later that evening, after Sophia was tucked into bed, Adrian found Natalia on the back terrace, looking out at the gardens that surrounded the property. Thank you, he said simply, settling into the chair beside her. I haven't seen her this happy in a very long time. She's an amazing little girl, Natalia replied. You should be very proud. They sat in comfortable silence for a moment before Adrian spoke again. Can I ask what happened yesterday with your wedding? Natalia sighed, pulling her knees up to her chest. The short version: Brandon, my fiancé, decided at the last minute that he couldn't go through with it. Apparently, he'd been seeing someone else and only stayed with me for my family's money. I'm sorry, Adrian said, and she could hear the genuine sympathy in his voice. That's a terrible betrayal. The worst part is that I should have seen it coming, Natalia admitted. All the signs were there, but I kept making excuses for him. I wanted so badly to believe someone could love me for who I am, not what I could provide. Adrian turned to look at her directly. For what it's worth, I think he's a complete fool. Anyone would be lucky to have you in their life. The sincerity in his voice made her heart skip a beat. Thank you. That means more than you know. As they talked under the stars, Natalia began to understand that maybe her ruined wedding hadn't been the end of her story after all. Maybe it had been the beginning of something she never could have imagined, something that might turn out to be infinitely better than what she'd lost. 2 weeks into her new life at the Thompson mansion, Natalia had settled into a routine that felt more natural than anything she'd experienced in months of wedding planning. Each morning began with Sophia's gentle knock on her door, followed by breakfast preparations and Adrian's hurried departure for the office. The billionaire businessman worked incredibly long hours, but he always made time to kiss his daughter goodbye and share a cup of coffee with Natalia while reviewing the day's plans. This particular morning found them in the art room, where Sophia had become increasingly bold in her creative expressions. The little girl was working on a large canvas, painting what appeared to be their house surrounded by flowers and sunshine. Tell me about the people in your painting, Natalia encouraged, settling beside her small charge with her own brush and palette. That's you, Sophia pointed to a figure with dark skin and a bright yellow dress standing in the garden. And that's me. A smaller figure with wild curls stood beside the first. And that's Daddy, but he's coming home from work instead of leaving. Natalia's heart squeezed at the subtle longing in that last observation. Adrian was a devoted father, but his demanding schedule meant many evenings ended with Sophia already asleep by the time he returned home. Maybe we should show Daddy this painting tonight, Natalia suggested. I think he'd love to see how talented you are. Sophia beamed at the praise, but then her expression grew more serious. Natalia, can I ask you something? Of course, sweetheart. You can ask me anything. Do you miss the man who was supposed to marry you? The question caught Natalia off guard, though she should have expected it. Sophia was remarkably perceptive for her age, and Natalia had been careful not to let her own emotional healing interfere with her care for the child. Sometimes, Natalia said honestly, but not the way you might think. I miss the idea of what I thought we had together. But I don't miss him specifically, because I realized he wasn't very kind to me. Sophia nodded solemnly. Mama used to say that people who aren't kind don't deserve our sadness. She said we should save our feelings for people who treasure them. The wisdom from a woman Natalia had never met brought tears to her eyes. Your mama sounds like she was very smart. She was. And she would have liked you a lot. Sophia reached over to pat Natalia's arm with a paint-covered hand. I can tell because you make the same face she did when she was thinking about how to help people feel better. Before Natalia could respond, they heard Adrian's voice from the hallway, much earlier than usual. He appeared in the doorway of the art room, his tie loosened and his hair slightly disheveled. Good afternoon, ladies. How are my two favorite artists today? Daddy, Sophia launched herself from her chair and into his arms, leaving colorful handprints on his white shirt. You're home early, are you sick? Adrian chuckled, spinning her around. Not sick, just finished my meetings early and decided to come home to see what you've been up to. Natalia felt a familiar warmth at seeing them together. Adrian was always completely present with Sophia, giving her his full attention in a way that made it clear she was the most important thing in his world. Natalia and I made paintings for you, Sophia announced, pulling him toward their easels. Look, this one is our house, but with you coming home instead of going away. Adrian studied the painting with the same serious attention he might give a business proposal. This is incredible, baby girl. I love how happy everyone looks. His eyes met Natalia's over Sophia's head. And I love that you painted Natalia as part of our family. She is part of our family, Sophia declared with 4-year-old certainty. Right, Natalia? Natalia felt her cheeks warm under Adrian's steady gaze. I'm honored to be part of your lives, she said carefully. What about dinner tonight? Adrian asked suddenly. I thought maybe we could cook together. All three of us. Sophia clapped her hands excitedly. Can we make spaghetti? It's my favorite. Spaghetti it is, Adrian agreed. Natalia, would you mind supervising 2 amateur chefs? I'd love to, Natalia said, surprised by how much the simple invitation meant to her. That evening in the kitchen, Natalia watched Adrian attempt to explain the finer points of pasta preparation to his daughter while she organized ingredients and tried not to laugh at their serious expressions. Adrian had changed into jeans and a casual shirt, and with his sleeves rolled up and flour in his hair, he looked younger and more relaxed than she'd ever seen him. "Daddy, you're making a mess," Sophia giggled as Adrian's attempts to twirl spaghetti around his fork resulted in sauce splashing across the counter. "I'm an engineer," Adrian protested good-naturedly. "I can design complex software systems, but apparently spaghetti is beyond my skill set." "Here, let me show you," Natalia offered, moving to stand beside him at the stove. She demonstrated the proper twirling technique, very aware of how close they were standing and how her heart rate picked up when he leaned in to watch. "Like this," Adrian tried again, this time successfully managing a neat bite. "Perfect," Natalia said, their eyes meeting over the pot of pasta. For a moment, the kitchen fell quiet except for the sound of bubbling sauce, and Natalia felt something electric pass between them. "I did it too," Sophia's excited voice broke the moment. "Look, Daddy, I'm a spaghetti expert now." They sat around the breakfast bar to eat, and Natalia marveled at how natural it felt to be there with them. Adrian asked about their day, listening intently as Sophia recounted every detail of their painting session and their walk through the gardens. "And then Natalia taught me a song Mama used to sing," Sophia continued. "But she knew all the words even though I forgot some of them." Adrian looked surprised. "Really, which song?" "The Sunshine Song," Sophia said. "You know, the one Mama sang when I was sad." Adrian's expression grew soft and slightly pained. "I remember that one. She sang it to you every night before bed when you were little." "Natalia has a pretty voice like Mama did," Sophia continued innocently. "Maybe she could sing it tonight when you read me my bedtime story." "I don't want to intrude on your special time together," Natalia began, but Adrian shook his head. "You wouldn't be intruding. If you'd like to join us, I think we'd both enjoy that." Later that evening, Natalia found herself curled up on one side of Sophia's bed while Adrian sat on the other, a storybook open between them. Sophia was snuggled against Natalia's side, her small hand holding onto Natalia's fingers as Adrian read about brave princesses and friendly dragons. When the story was finished, Sophia looked up at both adults with sleepy eyes. "Now the Sunshine Song." Natalia began to sing softly, the gentle melody filling the room with warmth. She noticed Adrian watching her with an expression she couldn't quite read, something between gratitude and something deeper, more complex. "You are my sunshine, my only sunshine, you make me happy when skies are gray." Sophia's eyes drifted closed before the song was finished, a peaceful smile on her face. Adrian and Natalia sat in comfortable silence for a moment, both reluctant to leave the cozy intimacy of the moment. "Thank you," Adrian whispered as they quietly left Sophia's room. "You have no idea what tonight meant to her. To both of us." Standing in the hallway outside Sophia's door, Natalia became acutely aware that they were alone together for the first time since her arrival. Adrian was closer than he'd been at dinner, close enough that she could see the gold flecks in his gray eyes and catch the subtle scent of his cologne. "She's an amazing little girl," Natalia said softly. "You're doing an incredible job with her." "I don't always feel that way," Adrian admitted. "Some days I feel like I'm failing her completely. Like I can't possibly be enough to make up for what she's lost." "Adrian, no," Natalia said instinctively, reaching out to touch his arm. "You are absolutely enough. The way she looks at you, the way she talks about you, she adores you completely." Adrian looked down at her hand on his arm, then back up to meet her eyes. "Having you here has made such a difference. Not just for Sophia but for me too. I'd forgotten what it felt like to have someone to share the day with, someone who genuinely cares about what happens to us." The intensity in his voice made Natalia's breath catch. They were standing very close now and she could feel the warmth radiating from his body. For a moment she thought he might kiss her, and she realized with startling clarity that she wanted him to. But then Adrian stepped back, running a hand through his hair. "I should let you get some rest. Thank you again for tonight." As Natalia watched him walk toward his own room, she touched her lips unconsciously, wondering what it would have felt like if he hadn't pulled away. The thought both thrilled and terrified her. She was supposed to be healing from Brandon's betrayal, not falling for her employer. But as she lay in bed that night, listening to the quiet sounds of the house settling around them, Natalia couldn't deny the truth that was becoming clearer each day. She wasn't just taking care of Sophia anymore. She was falling in love with both of them, with this beautiful broken family that was slowly becoming whole again. And judging by the look in Adrian's eyes tonight, she wasn't the only one feeling something deeper than a professional relationship. 3 weeks had passed since that almost kiss in the hallway, and the tension between Natalia and Adrian had grown thicker than the morning fog that often shrouded the mansion's gardens. They moved around each other with careful politeness during their shared moments, but Natalia caught him watching her with increasing frequency, his gray eyes holding questions neither of them seemed brave enough to voice. This morning found them in the kitchen as usual, with Sophia chattering about her plans for the day while Adrian scrolled through emails on his phone and Natalia packed a picnic lunch for their planned trip to the botanical gardens. "Daddy, you should come with us today," Sophia announced, looking up from her cereal bowl. "The flowers are really pretty, and Natalia says there's a butterfly house." Adrian looked up from his phone with genuine regret. "I wish I could, baby girl, but I have 3 conference calls scheduled and a presentation to finish." "You always have work," Sophia said with a small sigh that made both adults wince. "Actually," Natalia said carefully, "what if we planned a family outing for this weekend, something that all 3 of us could do together?" Adrian's eyes met hers across the kitchen island. "That sounds wonderful. What did you have in mind?" "There's a children's art festival downtown on Saturday," Natalia suggested. "Sophia could enter one of her paintings, and there are activities for families to do together." "Can we, Daddy, please?" Sophia bounced in her chair excitedly. "I could bring my painting of our house." "It's a date," Adrian said, then seemed to realize his choice of words. "I mean, it's a plan. A family plan." The slight flush that colored his cheeks made Natalia's heart flutter, but she forced herself to focus on finishing the picnic preparations. Later that afternoon, while Sophia napped after their garden adventure, Natalia found herself organizing the art supplies in the sunroom when Adrian appeared in the doorway. He'd come home early again, something that was becoming a pleasant habit. "How was the botanical garden?" he asked, settling into one of the chairs by the window. "Magical," Natalia said, her face lighting up with the memory. "Sophia made friends with every butterfly in the conservatory. She has your gift for connecting with living things." "My gift?" Adrian looked puzzled. "The way you are with her," Natalia explained, continuing to sort paintbrushes. "She feels completely safe and loved with you. That's not something every child has." Adrian was quiet for a moment, watching her work. "Can I ask you something personal?" Natalia's hands stilled on the art supplies. "Of course. What was your childhood like? Did you feel safe and loved?" The question caught her off guard with its gentleness. She set down the brushes and turned to face him fully. "My parents loved me, but they were very focused on appearances and social standing. I always felt like I had to be perfect to earn their approval. Maybe that's why I stayed with Brandon as long as I did, even when things felt wrong." "What felt wrong about it?" Adrian asked softly. Natalia considered the question, surprised by how much she wanted to share with him. "He never really saw me, he saw what I represented, the right family connections, the trust fund, the social status. But when I talked about things that mattered to me, like working with children or volunteering at the community center, his eyes would glaze over." "That must have been lonely." "It was," Natalia admitted. "I kept thinking that if I just tried harder, was more interesting or more beautiful or more whatever he wanted, he'd start to actually care about who I was inside." Adrian leaned forward in his chair. "Natalia, you are interesting and beautiful, but more than that, you're kind and intelligent and patient, and you light up every room you walk into. If Brandon couldn't see that, the problem was never with you." The sincerity in his voice made tears prick at her eyes. "Thank you. I'm still learning to believe that." "Believe it," Adrian said firmly. "Because it's true." They looked at each other for a long moment, and Natalia felt that familiar pull, the magnetic attraction that seemed to grow stronger every day. "Can I ask you something now?" she said. Adrian nodded. "What was Rebecca like?" Adrian's expression grew soft and distant. "She was sunshine," he said finally. "Even when she was sick, even when she was scared, she found ways to make other people smile. She used to say that joy was a choice, and she chose it every single day until she couldn't anymore." "She sounds wonderful." "She was. And she would have loved you," Adrian said, his voice thick with emotion. "She always said that Sophia would know the right people to trust, that she had good instincts about who belonged in her life." "Is that why you hired me?" Natalia asked. "Because Sophia chose me." Adrian stood up and moved closer to where she sat, close enough that she had to tilt her head back to meet his eyes. "I hired you because Sophia chose you," he said quietly. "But I'm glad I did for reasons that have nothing to do with my daughter." Natalia's heart began to race. "Adrian? I know this is complicated," he continued, his voice barely above a whisper. "I know you're still healing and I'm your employer, and Sophia has to come first. But I can't pretend I don't feel something when I'm with you." "I feel it too," Natalia admitted, standing so they were facing each other directly. But you're right, it is complicated. Adrian reached up to touch her face, his thumb brushing across her cheek with infinite gentleness. Maybe complicated doesn't have to mean impossible. This time, when he leaned down toward her, Natalia didn't step away. Their lips met in a kiss that was soft and sweet and full of all the emotions they'd been holding back for weeks. It lasted only a moment before they heard Sophia's voice calling from upstairs, but it changed everything between them. Natalia, Daddy, I'm awake. They stepped apart quickly, both breathing harder than normal. We should talk about this, Adrian said. Yes, Natalia agreed, touching her lips where she could still feel the warmth of his kiss. But later. Sophia needs us now. That evening, after Sophia was tucked into bed and they'd shared their usual quiet dinner, Adrian and Natalia found themselves back on the terrace under the stars. I don't want you to think I'm taking advantage of the situation, Adrian said, his hands clasped tightly in his lap. I know you're in a vulnerable position here, and I never want you to feel pressured or uncomfortable. You're not taking advantage, Natalia assured him. What I feel for you, it's real. It's not gratitude or loneliness or rebound feelings. It's genuine attraction and affection and something deeper than I expected to find. What I feel for you is deeper than I expected too, Adrian confessed. I thought I'd never want to open my heart again after losing Rebecca. But being with you, watching you with Sophia, it's like you've brought our whole house back to life. So what do we do now? Natalia asked. Adrian took her hand, intertwining their fingers. We take it slow. We see where this goes naturally. And we make sure that whatever happens between us, Sophia's well-being comes first. Agreed, Natalia said. She's been through enough changes. She needs stability and security. She has that with you, Adrian said, lifting their joined hands to press a soft kiss to her knuckles. You've given her something I couldn't provide alone, a sense that our family could be whole again. Sitting there under the stars with Adrian's warm hand in hers, Natalia felt a peace she'd never experienced with Brandon. This wasn't the desperate need to prove herself worthy of love. This was the quiet confidence that came from being truly seen and valued for exactly who she was. For the first time since that terrible day at the altar, Natalia began to believe that maybe her story was just beginning, not ending. Maybe the best chapters of her life were still ahead of her, written in the laughter of a little girl and the steady love of a man who understood what it meant to treasure what you'd been given. 1 month into her new life, Natalia had begun to believe that the worst of her past was firmly behind her. She and Adrian had settled into a careful but growing romance, sharing stolen moments after Sophia went to bed and meaningful looks across the breakfast table. Sophia continued to flourish under Natalia's care, her artwork becoming more vibrant and her personality more confident with each passing day. Which is why the sight of Brandon Martinez standing on the Thompson mansion's front steps sent shock waves through Natalia's entire system. She was returning from the farmer's market with Sophia, both of them laughing about the little girl's successful negotiation for an extra apple, when they spotted the familiar figure leaning against the luxury sedan in the circular driveway. Brandon looked exactly the same as he had 6 weeks ago, perfectly styled blonde hair, expensive designer suit, and that confident smile that she now realized had never quite reached his eyes. In his hands, he held an enormous bouquet of white roses and what appeared to be a jewelry box. Who's that man, Natalia? Sophia asked, instinctively moving closer to Natalia's side. He's staring at us. Someone I used to know, Natalia said carefully, her protective instincts kicking in immediately. Stay close to me, sweetheart. Brandon pushed himself off the car as they approached, his smile widening in that practiced way she remembered so well. Natalia, baby, you look incredible, he called out, spreading his arms as if expecting her to run into them. I've been looking everywhere for you. Brandon. Natalia's voice came out steadier than she felt. What are you doing here? I came to bring you home, Brandon said, as if it were the most obvious thing in the world. He gestured to the roses and jewelry box. I brought peace offerings. Your favorite flowers and that tennis bracelet you admired at Cartier. Sophia looked up at Natalia with wide, concerned eyes. This was clearly the mean man she'd heard about, and her small hand slipped into Natalia's with protective determination. I don't want to go anywhere with you, Natalia said firmly. And these aren't my favorite flowers. You never bothered to learn that I prefer daisies. Brandon's perfect smile faltered slightly. Come on, Nat, don't be difficult. I made a mistake, okay, I panicked about the commitment, but I've realized what I lost. We can work this out. No, we can't, Natalia said. You left me at the altar, Brandon. In front of 200 people. You chose someone else. That was just a temporary lapse in judgment, Brandon said dismissively. Amanda was a distraction, nothing more. You're the one I really want to build a life with. The casual way he dismissed both his betrayal and his affair made Natalia's anger spike. But before she could respond, she heard a car door slam and turned to see Adrian striding across the driveway with an expression that could have frozen fire. "Is there a problem here?" Adrian asked, his voice deceptively calm as he positioned himself beside Natalia and Sophia. Brandon looked Adrian up and down, taking in the expensive casual clothes and obvious protective stance. "And you are?" "Adrian Thompson," Adrian replied coolly. "This is my home, and these ladies are under my protection." "Your home?" Brandon's eyebrows rose. "Well, that explains a few things. Natalia, I have to say I'm disappointed. I never thought you'd be the type to move in with your rebound so quickly." "Don't talk to her like that," Sophia piped up unexpectedly, her small voice fierce with indignation. "Natalia is nice and you're being mean." Brandon looked down at Sophia with barely concealed irritation. "And who might you be, little girl?" "I'm Sophia Thompson, and this is my daddy, and Natalia is my family now," Sophia declared, moving to stand in front of Natalia like a tiny bodyguard. Adrian's hand found the small of Natalia's back, a gesture of support and solidarity that didn't go unnoticed by Brandon. Family. Brandon's laugh was ugly. "Natalia, surely you're not telling me you've gotten attached to some other man's child. You know how you feel about taking on other people's responsibilities." The deliberate cruelty of the comment made Natalia see red. "Don't you dare speak about Sophia that way. And for the record, I never said I didn't want children. I said I didn't want children with you because I knew you'd be a terrible father." Brandon's mask of charm finally slipped completely. "Listen, baby, you can throw your little tantrum, but we both know you'll come crawling back eventually. Your trust fund is tied up in that prenup we signed, and without me you're basically penniless." "Actually," Adrian interjected smoothly, "Natalia has a very good job here with excellent benefits and complete financial independence. She doesn't need your money or your empty promises." Brandon turned his attention to Adrian with obvious disdain. "Oh, I see how it is. The grieving widower and the runaway bride, very romantic. Tell me, Thompson, does she know about the clause in your wife's will, the one that cuts your daughter out of her trust fund if you remarry?" The blood drained from Natalia's face. Adrian's expression went completely still, and she realized with dawning horror that Brandon had done his research and found something that could hurt them. "There is no such clause," Adrian said quietly, but Natalia could hear the uncertainty in his voice. Brandon smiled triumphantly. "Are you sure about that? Maybe you should check with your lawyers. I did some digging after I found out where Natalia was staying. Your late wife was very specific about protecting her daughter's inheritance from potential gold diggers." Sophia looked confused and upset by the adult conversation swirling around her. Natalia knelt down to the little girl's level, ignoring Brandon's continued talking. "Sweetheart, why don't you go inside and wash up? These grown-ups need to finish their conversation." "I don't want to leave you with the mean man," Sophia whispered. "I'll be fine," Natalia assured her. "Your daddy is here to protect me just like you did. You were very brave." Sophia looked uncertain, but she nodded and ran toward the house, casting worried glances back over her shoulder. Once Sophia was safely inside, Natalia stood and faced Brandon with ice-cold fury. "Get off this property. Now." "Not without you," Brandon said stubbornly. "Natalia, be smart about this. Even if there's no clause in the will, do you really think this fantasy can last? You're the nanny, honey. The help. Rich men don't marry the help, they just use them until they find someone more appropriate." "That's enough," Adrian said, his voice carrying the kind of authority that came from years of running a successful company. "You have 30 seconds to get in your car and leave, or I'll call security." Brandon held up his hands in mock surrender. "Fine, I'll go. But Natalia, when this little fairy tale ends and you realize you've thrown away your real future for a temporary fantasy, you have my number." He tossed the roses and jewelry box onto the driveway and walked back to his car with exaggerated nonchalance. But before he got in, he turned back one more time. "By the way, you might want to ask your new boyfriend about the private investigator he hired to look into your background. Apparently, trust doesn't come as easily as you thought." With that parting shot, he drove away, leaving Natalia staring after him in shock. "Natalia," Adrian began, but she held up a hand to stop him. "Is it true?" she asked quietly. "About the investigator?" Adrian's silence was answer enough. "I needed to know that Sophia would be safe," he said finally. "It wasn't about trust, it was about my daughter's security." "And the will?" Natalia asked. "Is there really a clause?" "I don't know," Adrian admitted. "Rebecca's father insisted on some protective language, but I never read the fine details." I was too grief-stricken at the time to focus on legal technicalities. Natalia felt something crack inside her chest. All the progress they'd made, all the tentative hope she'd begun to build, suddenly felt fragile and uncertain. I need some time to think, she said, not meeting his eyes. Natalia, please. Don't let him poison what we have. What do we have, Adrian? She asked sadly. Because right now, I'm not sure I know any more. As she walked toward the house, leaving Adrian standing alone in the driveway surrounded by scattered white roses, Natalia wondered if Brandon had been right about one thing. Maybe fairy tales were just that, tales. Maybe the real world was too complicated for happy endings after all. But then she saw Sophia's face pressed against the living room window, watching for her return, and Natalia knew that whatever else might be uncertain, her love for that little girl was real and permanent and worth fighting for. The question was whether Adrian felt the same way, or if she was just another employee who had forgotten her place in his world. The law offices of Whitman, Blake and Associates felt imposing and sterile as Natalia sat beside Adrian in the mahogany-paneled conference room. Across from them, Rebecca's father, Judge Harrison Blake, reviewed the documents with the meticulous attention of a man accustomed to legal complexities. Sophia was spending the day with Mrs. Chen, blissfully unaware of the adult drama that might reshape her future. It had been 3 tense days since Brandon's visit. 3 days of careful politeness and meaningful silences between Natalia and Adrian. 3 days of Sophia asking why everyone seemed sad and if the mean man was coming back. Well, Judge Blake said finally, removing his reading glasses, there is indeed a clause regarding remarriage, but it's not quite what Mr. Martinez suggested. Adrian leaned forward tensely. What does it actually say? Rebecca was concerned about protecting Sophia's inheritance from potential fortune hunters. Judge Blake explained, his tone neutral but his eyes watchful. The clause states that if you remarry within 5 years of Rebecca's death, and if the marriage fails within 2 years, Sophia's trust reverts to the Blake family foundation. Natalia felt her stomach drop. So if Adrian marries me and we divorce quickly, Sophia loses her inheritance, Judge Blake finished. But if the marriage lasts longer than 2 years, the clause becomes void and Sophia's trust remains intact. Adrian ran his hands through his hair. Rebecca never mentioned any of this to me. She was protecting your daughter, Judge Blake said gently. We'd both seen too many cases of widowed parents being taken advantage of by people who saw dollar signs instead of genuine affection. But not Natalia, Adrian said firmly. She's never even asked about money. She cares about Sophia, not my wealth. Judge Blake turned his penetrating gaze to Natalia. Miss Reed, may I ask about your own financial situation? Natalia straightened in her chair. I have a small trust fund from my grandparents, but it's not accessible until I'm 30. My family cut off my allowance when I refused to reconcile with Brandon. Right now, my salary from Adrian is my only income, and it's more than adequate for my needs. You're not interested in accessing your family's textile fortune. No, Natalia said simply. I want to build my own life, make my own choices. Money from my family always came with strings attached, and I'm done being controlled by financial manipulation. Judge Blake studied her for a long moment, then nodded approvingly. Rebecca would have liked you, he said finally. She had no patience for people who used others for gain. So what happens now? Adrian asked. Now you decide what matters most to you, Judge Blake replied. The clause was designed to protect Sophia from a hasty marriage to the wrong person. If Miss Reed is the right person, then time will prove it. Later that evening, back at the mansion, Natalia found herself in the garden while Adrian put Sophia to bed alone. She needed space to think, to process everything they'd learned. The setting sun painted the sky in shades of pink and gold, but she barely noticed the beauty around her. Natalia. She turned to find Adrian approaching, his expression uncertain. How is Sophia? She asked. Confused about why we've been acting strange, Adrian admitted. She asked if you were going to leave like the mean man wanted you to. Natalia's heart clenched. What did you tell her? That I hoped you'd stay forever, but that grown-ups sometimes have to make complicated decisions. They stood in silence for a moment, the weight of unspoken words hanging between them. I've been thinking, Adrian said finally, about what Brandon said about the investigation I had done. Adrian, you don't have to. Yes, I do, he interrupted gently. You have every right to be upset about that. I should have told you from the beginning. Natalia sighed. I understand why you did it. Sophia has to be your priority. But I should have been honest with you once I realized I was falling in love with you. The simple declaration made her breath catch. You love me. Adrian stepped closer, his gray eyes intense in the fading light. I love you, Natalia. Not because you're good with Sophia, not because you fit into our lives so perfectly, but because of who you are. Your kindness, your strength, your ability to find joy in simple moments. I love the way you sing off-key in the shower and how you always remember to cut Sophia's sandwiches into triangles because she thinks they taste better that way. Tears spilled down Natalia's cheeks. I love you too. But that clause in the will changes nothing, Adrian said firmly. If you'll have me, if you'll have us, we'll make it work. The clause only matters if we fail, and I have no intention of failing at loving you. But what if something goes wrong? What if we can't make it work and Sophia loses her inheritance because of me? Adrian took her hands in his touch warm and reassuring. Natalia, look at me. Sophia's inheritance is just money. What you've given her is infinitely more valuable. You've given her confidence, creativity, and the belief that our family can be whole again. No amount of money is worth more than that. Are you sure? Natalia whispered. I've never been more sure of anything in my life. Before she could respond, they heard the patter of small feet on the garden path. Sophia appeared in her nightgown, her dark curls wild around her face. Daddy, she called, running toward them. I had a bad dream about the mean man taking Natalia away. Adrian scooped her up into his arms. Just a dream, baby girl. No one's taking Natalia anywhere. Promise, Sophia demanded, wrapping her small arms around both adults. Adrian looked at Natalia over their daughter's head. Promise. If Natalia agrees, she's going to be part of our family forever. Really? Sophia pulled back to look at Natalia with shining eyes. You'll be my real mama. Natalia felt her heart expand until she thought it might burst. If you'll have me, sweetheart. I love you and your daddy very much. I choose you, Sophia announced with 4-year-old finality. I choose both of you to be my family. Standing there in the garden with Adrian's arms around both of them, Natalia realized that Brandon had been wrong about everything. This wasn't a fairy tale that would end in disappointment. This was real love, messy and complicated and absolutely worth fighting for. So what do we do about the clause? She asked Adrian quietly. We do what Judge Blake suggested, Adrian replied. We take our time, we build something strong and lasting, and we prove that what we have is real. How long do we wait? Adrian smiled, pressing a soft kiss to her forehead. As long as it takes. I'm not going anywhere and neither are you. Right. Natalia looked at Sophia, who had fallen asleep in their arms, her face peaceful and trusting. She looked at Adrian, whose love shone clearly in his eyes despite all the complications they faced. Right, she agreed. We're a family now, no matter what anyone else says. And for the first time since Brandon's visit, Natalia felt the peace and certainty return to her heart. They would face whatever challenges came together as a family, because some things were worth fighting for and some love was strong enough to overcome any obstacle. 6 months had passed since Brandon's unwelcome visit, and life in the Thompson household had settled into a rhythm of quiet happiness. Natalia and Adrian had grown closer without rushing toward marriage, taking time to build a solid foundation for their future. Sophia continued to flourish, her artwork now filling an entire wall of the family room and her vocabulary expanding daily with new expressions of love and contentment. Which made Adrian's pale, drawn appearance at breakfast one Tuesday morning all the more alarming. Daddy, you look tired, Sophia observed with the blunt honesty of childhood, pausing between bites of her pancakes. Did you not sleep good? Well, Natalia corrected gently, then looked at Adrian with concern. But Sophia's right. You do look exhausted. Adrian rubbed his temples, his usual composed demeanor cracked with stress. I've been dealing with a situation at the office. It's nothing for either of you to worry about. But Natalia had learned to read the signs of Adrian's worry over the past months. The tight lines around his eyes, the way he held his shoulders, the distracted manner in which he scrolled through his phone all signaled something serious. Adrian, she said softly, what's really going on? He looked at her across the kitchen island, then at Sophia, who was listening with the intense focus children reserved for adult conversations they sensed were important. Sophia, sweetheart, why don't you go brush your teeth and get ready for our art lesson with Natalia? But I want to help Daddy feel better, Sophia protested. You help me feel better every day just by being you, Adrian assured her, managing a genuine smile. Go on, I'll be up to see your latest painting before I leave for work. Once Sophia had reluctantly departed, Adrian's mask of calm composure finally slipped completely. We're being targeted for a hostile takeover, he said quietly. Meridian Corp has been buying up shares through shell companies for months. Yesterday they made their move public. Natalia felt her stomach drop. What does that mean exactly? It means they want to acquire Thompson Tech, probably to break it apart and sell the pieces. They see our medical software as valuable intellectual property, but they couldn't care less about our mission or our employees. Adrian's voice was tight with controlled anger. 200 people could lose their jobs, and all the hospitals we serve would have to find new systems. Can you stop them? I'm trying. My lawyers are working around the clock, but Meridian has deeper pockets and fewer scruples. They're spreading rumors about our financial stability, trying to drive down our stock price to make the takeover cheaper. Natalia moved around the island to stand beside him, placing her hand over his where it gripped his coffee mug. What can I do to help? Adrian looked at her with surprise and gratitude. Natalia, this isn't your problem. You shouldn't have to worry about my business troubles. Your problems are my problems, she said simply. We're a family, remember families face challenges together. The emotion that crossed Adrian's face made her heart ache. I love you, he said quietly. God, I love you so much it terrifies me sometimes. I love you too. Now tell me what I can do. Over the next week, Natalia watched Adrian work 18-hour days, taking conference calls at all hours and traveling to meetings with investors and board members. She stepped up to manage more of Sophia's care and the household routines, ensuring that their little girl felt secure despite the chaos swirling around them. But it was Sophia herself who provided an unexpected perspective on the crisis. Natalia, she said one evening as they painted together in the art room, why is Daddy so sad about work? Natalia considered how to explain complex business concepts to a 4-year-old. Some people want to take over his company and change everything he's worked to build. He's trying to protect the people who work for him. Sophia nodded solemnly. Like when the big kids try to take the little kids' toys at the playground. Exactly like that. But Daddy always says that bullies only win if good people don't stand up to them. Out of the mouths of babes, Natalia thought. You're absolutely right, sweetheart. That night, after Sophia was asleep, Natalia found Adrian in his home office surrounded by legal documents and empty coffee cups. His tie was loosened, his shirt sleeves rolled up, and he looked more defeated than she'd ever seen him. Any good news? She asked gently. Adrian looked up with exhausted eyes. Meridian made another move today. They're now holding 35% of our shares. If they get to 51%, they win, Natalia finished. They win and everything I've built disappears. All the hospitals that depend on our software, all the employees who've been with me since the beginning, all of it gone so some corporate raiders can make a quick profit. Natalia perched on the edge of his desk, studying his face in the lamplight. What would Rebecca have done? The question seemed to surprise him. Rebecca. From everything you've told me about her, she was a fighter. She chose joy even when facing impossible odds. What would she have told you to do? Adrian was quiet for a long moment, considering. She would have told me to remember why I started the company in the first place. To focus on the mission, not the money. And what was the mission? To help people. To make medical care more efficient and accessible. To honor the doctors and nurses who saved my brother by giving them better tools. Natalia smiled. Then that's your answer. Don't fight them on their terms, fight them on yours. What do you mean? Stop playing defense and start playing offense. Remind everyone why Thompson Tech matters. Show the world what Meridian would destroy if they succeed. Adrian sat back in his chair, a spark of his old determination flickering in his eyes. A publicity campaign. Media interviews, hospital testimonials, employee stories. Exactly. Make this about more than stock prices and profit margins. Make it about people. For the first time in days, Adrian smiled. You're brilliant, you know that. I'm in love with a brilliant man who sometimes can't see the forest for the trees, Natalia replied, leaning down to kiss him softly. Now come to bed. You'll think more clearly in the morning. The next day marked the beginning of what the business press would later call the Heart Campaign. Adrian and his team launched a coordinated effort to tell the human story behind Thompson Tech. They released videos of doctors explaining how the software had helped them save lives, interviews with employees whose families depended on their jobs, and testimonials from patients whose care had been improved by more efficient hospital systems. Natalia found herself drawn into the campaign, helping to coordinate social media efforts and even appearing in a video with Sophia about how Adrian's work made a difference in people's lives. My daddy helps doctors take care of sick people, Sophia explained to the camera with earnest 4-year-old logic. If the mean company takes away his work, then doctors can't help as many people get better. The video went viral within hours, shared by medical professionals and parents across the country. #SaveThompsonTech began trending, and suddenly the business story became a human interest story. But the real turning point came when Judge Blake, Rebecca's father, made an unexpected appearance at Adrian's office. "I've been following the news," he said without preamble. "This Meridian Corporation reminds me of the worst kind of legal predator I used to see in my courtroom. Judge Blake, I appreciate your concern, but I'm not here as Rebecca's father," the older man interrupted. "I'm here as someone who believes in what you're doing. The Blake Foundation controls a significant investment portfolio, and we'd like to make a tender offer for Meridian's shares in Thompson Tech." Adrian stared at him in shock. "You want to buy them out? At a premium if necessary. Some things are more important than profit margins, Adrian." Rebecca believed that, and so do I. Within 48 hours, the business landscape had shifted dramatically. The Blake Foundation's intervention, combined with the public support generated by the Heart campaign, forced Meridian Corporation to the negotiating table. Other investors, inspired by the grassroots support, began buying shares to prevent the hostile takeover. By the end of the week, Meridian had withdrawn their bid, unable to compete with the combination of financial backing and public sentiment that Adrian had rallied. "We did it," Adrian said, walking into the kitchen where Natalia was preparing dinner while Sophia colored at the breakfast bar. "Thompson Tech remains independent." "Daddy won?" Sophia asked, looking up from her drawing of what appeared to be a superhero fighting a dragon. "Daddy won," Adrian confirmed, scooping her up into his arms and spinning her around. "And it's partly thanks to you, little artist. Your video helped show everyone what we were fighting for." "I told everyone you help people," Sophia said proudly. "Because that's what heroes do." That evening, after Sophia was asleep, Adrian and Natalia sat on the terrace celebrating with a bottle of wine and the quiet satisfaction of a crisis overcome. "I couldn't have done this without you," Adrian said, taking her hand across the small table. "When I was ready to give up, you reminded me what was really important." "You would have figured it out eventually," Natalia said. "You're too good a man to let the bullies win." "Maybe. But having you believe in me made all the difference." Adrian was quiet for a moment, then looked at her with an expression that made her heart skip. "Natalia, this whole experience has shown me something important." "What's that?" "Life is unpredictable. Business can collapse, health can fail, circumstances can change in ways we never expect. But through all of it, what matters most is the people we choose to stand with." Natalia felt her pulse quicken. "Adrian? I know we agreed to take our time, to prove that what we have is real and lasting. But I already know it's real. I knew it the night you walked through our door in that wedding dress, and I've known it every day since." He reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out a small velvet box, setting it carefully on the table between them. "Natalia Reed, will you marry me not because of any timeline or legal clause, but because I can't imagine spending another day without you as my partner in every sense of the word?" Natalia stared at the ring box, her eyes filling with tears. "The will, the clause. Judge Blake had his lawyers review it again after he helped us with Meridian. The way it's written, our engagement alone shows serious intent. If we marry and stay married for 2 years, which I absolutely plan to do, then the clause becomes void anyway." "And if something goes wrong?" Natalia asked, though her heart was already singing with joy. "Nothing will go wrong," Adrian said with quiet certainty. "But even if it did, Sophia would still have everything that really matters. 2 parents who love her unconditionally and will always put her first." Natalia looked toward the house where their daughter slept peacefully, then back at the man who had become her anchor and her adventure all at once. "Yes," she whispered. "Yes, I'll marry you." Adrian opened the box to reveal a stunning solitaire diamond that caught the moonlight like captured starfire. As he slipped it onto her finger, Natalia marveled at how perfectly it fit, just like everything else in this new life she'd stumbled into. "I love you," Adrian said, pulling her into his arms. "I love your strength and your kindness and the way you make our family complete." "I love you too," Natalia replied, standing on her toes to kiss him. "All of you forever." As they held each other under the stars, Natalia thought about the journey that had brought her here. 6 months ago, she'd been a runaway bride with a broken heart and no plan for the future. Now she was engaged to a man who cherished her, stepmother to a little girl who filled her days with laughter, and part of a family that had faced adversity together and emerged stronger. Sometimes the wrong door really did lead to the right place after all. 3 weeks had passed since Adrian's private proposal on the terrace, and they had decided to keep the engagement quiet until they could share the news properly with Sophia. The little girl had noticed the ring, of course, but accepted Natalia's explanation that it was a friendship ring from Daddy with the easy acceptance of childhood. Now, as they prepared for a special family day that Adrian had planned with mysterious enthusiasm, Natalia found herself both nervous and excited about finally making their engagement official in Sophia's eyes. "Daddy's being very secretive about today," Sophia observed as Natalia helped her into a pretty yellow sundress. "He keeps smiling that funny smile he gets when he's planning surprises." "Do you like surprises?" Natalia asked, braiding Sophia's wild curls into neat pigtails. "I love surprises, especially good ones. Bad surprises are like when the dentist says you have a cavity." Sophia wrinkled her nose. "But Daddy only does good surprises." They found Adrian waiting in the kitchen, dressed in khakis and a blue button-down shirt that brought out his eyes. He was packing a picnic basket with suspicious care, including what appeared to be a bottle of sparkling cider and 3 crystal glasses. "Are you ready for our adventure, ladies?" he asked with barely contained excitement. "Where are we going?" Sophia demanded, bouncing on her toes. "You'll see," Adrian said mysteriously. "But I promise it's somewhere special." They drove through the countryside for about 30 minutes before turning into a small park that Natalia had never seen before. It was beautifully maintained but not crowded, with rolling green lawns and mature oak trees that provided perfect shade. In the center of the park was a small gazebo surrounded by flower beds bursting with color. "It's beautiful," Natalia breathed as they walked toward the gazebo, Sophia skipping ahead to explore. "This is where I proposed to Rebecca," Adrian said quietly. "I thought it was only right that I proposed to you properly in the same place, with Sophia here to be part of it this time." Natalia's heart melted completely. "Adrian?" "Look, Daddy," Sophia called from the gazebo. "There are flowers everywhere and butterflies." They spread their picnic blanket on the grass near the gazebo, and for the next hour they enjoyed sandwiches and fresh fruit while Sophia chased butterflies and picked wildflowers for bouquets. The atmosphere was relaxed and happy, filled with laughter and easy conversation. But Natalia could sense Adrian's growing nervousness as the afternoon progressed. He kept checking his watch and glancing toward the gazebo with an expression of barely contained anticipation. Finally, as they finished eating, Adrian stood and cleared his throat formally. "Sophia, sweetheart, could you come here please? Daddy has something very important to ask you." Sophia abandoned her butterfly chase and came running, her cheeks flushed with sunshine and exercise. She settled on the blanket between them, looking back and forth with curious eyes. "What is it, Daddy?" Adrian took a deep breath, then reached for Natalia's hand. "Sophia, you know that I love Natalia very much and that she loves both of us, right?" Sophia nodded solemnly. "She loves us bunches and bunches. And we love her bunches and bunches too." "That's right. Well, when grown-ups love each other the way Natalia and I do, sometimes they decide to get married and become a real family forever." Sophia's eyes grew wide. "Like in fairy tales." "Like in fairy tales," Adrian agreed, smiling. "But before I can ask Natalia to marry me properly, I need to ask your permission first. Because you're the most important person in my whole world, and I would never do anything that would make you unhappy." Sophia looked at Natalia with serious consideration, then back at her father. "If you marry Natalia, does that mean she'll be my real mama?" "If that's what you want," Natalia said softly. "I would be honored to be your real mama, officially and forever. And we'll live together always, always and always." "Always and always," Adrian confirmed. "Through good times and hard times, happy days and sad days. We'll be a family forever." Sophia was quiet for a moment, her small face scrunched in concentration. Then suddenly her face broke into the brightest smile Natalia had ever seen. "Yes," she shouted, throwing her arms around both adults. "Yes, yes, yes, marry her, Daddy, make her my real mama." Adrian laughed, his eyes bright with unshed tears. "I was hoping you'd say that." He stood and pulled Natalia to her feet, leading both of them to the gazebo where the afternoon sun filtered through the lattice work in patterns of gold and shadow. "Sophia, I need you to help me with this next part," Adrian said, pulling the ring box from his pocket. "This is a very special ring for a very special lady." Sophia clapped her hands together in delight. "It's so pretty, can I hold it?" Adrian carefully removed the ring and placed it in Sophia's small palm. "Now you get to help Daddy ask Natalia the most important question in the world." They knelt together in front of Natalia, Adrian's hand covering Sophia's as she held the ring. "Natalia Reed," Adrian began, his voice thick with emotion, "6 months ago you walked into our lives and changed everything. You brought light back into our house, joy back into our days and hope back into our hearts. You make the best pancakes and you sing pretty songs and you always remember to cut my sandwiches right," Sophia added seriously, making both adults laugh through their tears. "You love my daughter like your own, You support my dreams even when they seem impossible, and you make me want to be the best man I can possibly be, Adrian continued. Will you marry us? Will you be Sophia's mama and my wife and complete our family forever? Natalia looked down at them, these two beautiful souls who had saved her from despair and given her a love she never knew existed. Her heart was so full she could barely speak. Yes, she whispered, then louder, yes, I'll marry you both. There's nothing in the world I want more. Sophia carefully slipped the ring onto Natalia's finger with Adrian's help, then threw herself into Natalia's arms. Now you're my real mama forever and ever, she declared. Forever and ever, Natalia agreed, holding her tight while Adrian wrapped his arms around both of them. As they stood there in the gazebo surrounded by flowers and butterflies and dappled sunlight, Natalia felt a peace and completeness she had never imagined possible. This was what love was supposed to feel like. Safe and exciting, comfortable and adventurous, grounded in reality but touched with magic. When will the wedding be? Sophia asked practically. When would you like it to be? Adrian asked her. Sophia considered this weighty question with all the seriousness it deserved. Before my birthday in December. I want to be a flower girl and I want to wear a princess dress and I want there to be lots of cake. That sounds perfect, Natalia laughed. A Christmas wedding with lots of cake. And dancing, Sophia added. Mama used to say that weddings should always have dancing because love makes people want to dance. Adrian's eyes grew soft at the mention of Rebecca. Then we'll definitely have dancing. As they packed up their picnic and prepared to head home, Sophia ran ahead to the car clutching her wildflower bouquets. Adrian caught Natalia's hand and pulled her close for a moment. Are you happy? He asked, searching her face. I'm happier than I ever dreamed possible, Natalia replied honestly. Thank you for making this so perfect, for including Sophia in everything. She's the reason we're all together, Adrian said. That first night, she knew exactly what we needed before we did. Natalia looked toward the car where Sophia was carefully arranging her flowers in the cup holders and chattering to herself about wedding plans. She really did, didn't she, our little matchmaker? Our little miracle, Adrian corrected, kissing her softly. Just like you. As they drove home to begin planning their Christmas wedding, Natalia reflected on the strange and wonderful path that had led her here. 6 months ago, she'd thought her life was ending. Instead, it had been just beginning. Sometimes getting lost was the only way to find where you truly belonged. And she belonged here, with this man and this child, in this family they were building together with love and hope and endless possibilities for joy. December 23rd dawned crisp and clear, with fresh snow dusting the grounds of the Thompson estate like powdered sugar on a wedding cake. Inside the mansion, controlled chaos reigned as vendors, family members, and friends prepared for the evening ceremony that would finally make the Thompson family officially complete. Natalia stood in front of the full-length mirror in the master bedroom, hardly recognizing herself in the ivory silk gown that seemed to have been designed specifically for this moment. The dress was elegant but not ostentatious, with delicate lace sleeves and a flowing skirt that would be perfect for dancing. Around her neck, she wore Rebecca's pearl necklace, a gift from Judge Blake, who said his daughter would have wanted the new Mrs. Thompson to have something precious from the past to carry into the future. You look like a real princess, Sophia announced from the doorway, where she stood in her own ivory and gold flower girl dress, her dark curls crowned with a circlet of white roses. But prettier than the ones in my storybooks. Thank you, sweetheart. You look absolutely beautiful yourself. Natalia knelt down to Sophia's level, careful not to wrinkle either of their dresses. Are you ready to be my maid of honor? I'm ready to be your daughter, Sophia said with 5-year-old solemnity. After today I get to call you Mama for real, right? If that's what you want, Natalia said, her eyes misting with happy tears. That's what I want most in the whole world. A soft knock at the door interrupted their moment. Adrian's voice came from the hallway. May I come in? I know it's bad luck to see the bride, but I have something for both my girls. Come in, Daddy, Sophia called. Mama looks so pretty you're going to cry happy tears. Adrian entered, devastating in his black tuxedo, and stopped dead when he saw Natalia. The expression on his face made her heart skip several beats. Sophia's right, he said quietly. I might cry happy tears. He approached them carefully, carrying 2 small jewelry boxes. I have something for each of you, he said, opening the first box to reveal a delicate gold bracelet with a small charm in the shape of a paintbrush. For my artist daughter, who colors our world with joy every day. Sophia gasped with delight as he fastened it around her small wrist. It's perfect, Daddy, thank you. Then he turned to Natalia with the second box. Inside was a matching gold bracelet, but her charm was in the shape of a key. For the woman who holds the key to our hearts, Adrian said as he clasped it around her wrist. Thank you for finding us when we needed you most. I think you found me, Natalia replied, touching the charm reverently. We found each other, Adrian corrected. All three of us. Mrs. Chen appeared in the doorway, elegant in navy blue and looking slightly emotional herself. It's time, she announced. The guests are seated and the minister is ready. The ceremony took place in the mansion's grand living room, which had been transformed into a winter wonderland with white flowers, candles and twinkling lights that rivaled the stars visible through the tall windows. 50 guests were seated in white chairs arranged in neat rows, including Judge Blake, several of Adrian's business associates, some of Natalia's cousins who had reconciled with her after her engagement announcement, and many of the hospital staff who had worked with Thompson Tech Software. Natalia's parents had declined the invitation, still bitter about her refusal to reconcile with Brandon, but their absence couldn't dampen her joy. She had learned that family wasn't always about blood relations. Sometimes it was about the people who chose to love and support you. The ceremony began with Sophia walking down the aisle, scattering white rose petals with serious concentration and earning smiles and soft laughter from the guests. When she reached the front, she took her place beside the minister with perfect poise. Then the string quartet began the wedding march, and Natalia appeared at the back of the room. She had chosen to walk alone, symbolizing her journey from independence to chosen family, and every step felt like a declaration of joy. Adrian's face when he saw her coming toward him was everything she could have hoped for and more. Love, gratitude, wonder, and promise all shone clearly in his expression. When she reached him, he took her hands and whispered, "You're absolutely perfect." The minister, a kind elderly man who had known the Thompson family for years, began the ceremony with words about love, commitment, and the beautiful complexity of blended families. Marriage, he said, is not just the union of two people, but the creation of something entirely new. Today, Adrian, Natalia, and Sophia are not just witnessing a wedding. They are forming a new family built on love, respect, and mutual commitment. When it came time for vows, Adrian went first. Natalia, he began, his voice steady despite the emotion in his eyes, 6 months ago, you walked into our lives during a storm and you've been our sunshine ever since. You've loved my daughter as your own, supported my dreams and shown me that it's possible to love again. Without forgetting the love that came before. I promise to cherish you, protect you, encourage your dreams, and build a life with you filled with laughter, adventure, and endless love. Natalia wiped away tears before beginning her own vows. Adrian, you and Sophia saved me in ways you'll never fully understand. You showed me what real love looks like, patient, kind, secure, and generous. You gave me a family when I thought I'd lost everything, and a purpose when I thought I'd never find my place in the world. I promise to love you and Sophia with all my heart, to stand by you through whatever challenges we face, and to help you build a home where love always wins. When the minister asked for the rings, Sophia stepped forward with a small pillow that held 2 matching platinum bands. These rings, the minister intoned as Adrian and Natalia exchanged them, symbolize your unending love and commitment to each other and to the family you're creating together. Finally, the moment Sophia had been waiting for arrived. By the power vested in me, the minister announced, I now pronounce you husband and wife. Adrian, you may kiss your bride. The kiss was soft and sweet and full of promise for all the years ahead. But it was interrupted by Sophia's excited voice. Now I can call her Mama for real. The laughter and applause that followed felt like a celebration of everything they had overcome and everything they were beginning together. The reception was intimate and joyful, filled with dancing, heartfelt toasts, and the kind of happiness that comes from knowing you're exactly where you belong. Judge Blake gave a speech about Rebecca's joy in seeing her family grow and heal. Adrian's business partner talked about watching the confirmed bachelor become a devoted father and now a loving husband. Sophia insisted on making her own toast, standing on a chair to announce that she was the luckiest girl in the world because now I have the best mama and daddy ever. As the evening wound down and the last guest departed, the new family of 3 found themselves alone in the living room, surrounded by flowers and flickering candles. I have one more surprise, Adrian announced, producing an envelope from his jacket pocket. For our honeymoon. Natalia opened it to find tickets to Paris. Adrian, it's beautiful, but what about Sophia? I'm going too, Sophia announced proudly. Daddy says it's a family honeymoon because we're all married to each other now. Natalia looked at Adrian in amazement. A family honeymoon. I couldn't bear to leave her behind, Adrian admitted. And I thought it would be perfect for us to start our married life as a complete family. I love you, Natalia whispered, pulling both her husband and daughter close. I love both of you so much. 1 year later, Natalia stood in the same living room, now decorated for Sophia's 6th birthday party. The little girl was showing off her latest painting to her friends, a portrait of their family that included a new addition, the baby sister who was currently growing in Natalia's gently rounded belly. She's going to be an artist like her big sister, Natalia murmured to Adrian as they watched Sophia hold court with her party guests. Or a computer programmer like her dad, Adrian replied, his hand resting protectively over their unborn child. Either way, she'll be loved beyond measure. Just like all of us, Natalia agreed, leaning into his embrace. As she looked around the room filled with laughter and love, Natalia marveled at the journey that had brought her here. The day she'd fled her wedding in the rain, she thought her life was ending. Instead, it had been the beginning of everything she'd never dared to dream. Sometimes the wrong door really was the right door after all. Sometimes getting lost was the only way to find your true home. And sometimes the worst day of your life was just the first chapter of your greatest love story. In her case, all three had been beautifully, perfectly true.